Yeah, I know it's live. I just don't know if I have to do anything to actually record it, like. It to you. Well, we'll try it. If it doesn't work, then we'll just have to make do.
Guess it's your college. Oh.
Yeah, hopefully it works, because well, if not, we'll so. Okay, so I'm gonna go over a little bit kind of what I talked with when I first came in with these guys, just so everybody kind of gets this. But in terms of module pattern, again, right now everything kind of looks fairly different. I mean, the patterns don't fully register. It's like your code looks different than mine. How could it be the same thing, right? So kind of just want to try to clarify the kind of couple different ways pattern. Just a style preference, and that all do the same thing. It's all kind of to solidify your understanding of actually what in reality does the same. Codes do that module is going to be self-invoking if he immediately invoked function expression. Sometimes what you'll see, I write these like this. You will see people do this. And do you remember Crockford has an opinion on this, Ray? I don't know if you remember. I think he puts inside, right?
Oh, does he?
I don't know. I don't remember. Yeah. so he doesn't like them outside.
Yeah, because they look. Well.
So yeah, so this is donkey balls.
Donkey balls. Is it like like seeing it in the donkey balls DB way?
We can change it into donkey buttholes. No, so I did.
But Simpson liked it that way. He liked it with
Okay.
on the outside.
Right.
You knew exactly that he was smoking it.
Yeah. So let me kind of, I guess, just talk about this a little bit, and I'll leave it to people's what do you see that makes sense to you? I think that's the most important thing. What makes sense to you that you see it and you automatically know what it's doing, and that's really more important than whether somebody likes looking at donkey balls or not. And when you're in a team, what's the preferred common approach for everybody involved, and just that's what matters much more than. But again, when we kind of look at this, we know that this returns a function if we do this. We know that basically what this is. It's basically an anonymous function, right? But for some reason, when JavaScript just gives us the ability to write an anonymous function without the function keyword. So really, this is kind of where we start off with this thing, is that an opening and closing parentheses is basically this, right? And so just kind of want to make that clear, because that's what the hardest part about seeing the syntax and having it make sense is that And so therefore, this being a function like this, we can invoke it like that, right? That's, we're saying that this function, you know, we're putting this inside of a function, and the return of this basically is going to return a function to us when we have this function declaration wrapped in parentheses. It's going to return us the function that's declared inside this thing. So again, just to kind of illustrate what this would look like, kind of like it's doing this. That's basically what's happening, is that we're truly invoking a function that returns a function. And so so if I were to, you know, put this in a variable, you know, my anonymous function, then I could invoke that, right? I can put a function in a variable and invoke it. So this right here is basically the same as, you know, as this and as this, right? But again, it's what we're doing. What I'm trying to illustrate right now is deconstructing this weird syntax that we only see in Iffy's immediately invoked function expressions, and just trying to put clarity on why this funky looking syntax works based on what we already know about functions and how everything else is written, right? Because everything else looks like this and it makes sense to us, and then all of a sudden we get this glob of, you know, just text, right? So so again, this returns a function just like this is doing, and then when that thing is returned, we're just immediately invoking that, just like this. So they just made it, you know, it looks weird, but they made it easier on us. And so to get back to kind of like the donkey balls kind of talk, you know, yes, this thing returns a function and then you invoke it. That makes sense to me. You also could say that, you know, that this thing doesn't really return anything, that right after the function declaration, you invoke it immediately. And they both do the same thing. What do I prefer? I think I like this just because I think I get very clearly here, you know, my opening and closing parentheses. And really, you know, all I really care about is that, you know, all my stuff that is in here basically returns an object to my variable. And that's really all I care about. And you'll definitely get to the point where you don't have to think so hard when looking at this stuff. You're just like, I know my module is, you know, an object that has functions and properties that I can access. So does this help to, when you kind of see it broken down like that, like this? And I could take this even a step further. What we're really doing in terms of this is, I think this actually makes it more confusing, but kind of what this, and you will see this for sure, is we're returning an object that, gosh, I feel like I'm just going to like create more confusion, but you will absolutely see this and see it very soon. So I'll just talk about it. Turn get value, you know, Kind of, this is a nice naming convention if I'm going to do something, have something private. So now I've just probably made this even harder to understand. But this right here, again, is the same as this. Is that I have a function that's being declared. It's an anonymous function because I don't give it a name. Don't have a name here, therefore it's just an anonymous function. Inside of that function, just like any other function I would write, I'll do, I could have a named function just the same, and any function, I can write a variable inside of that function. And again, when we talk about functions, it's all about input and output, right? I can, in any function, return a value, right? So again, that's all this is doing is if we kind of deconstruct it, that we're just writing a function and block out all this other syntax. Inside of that function, we're declaring a variable that is encapsulated inside that function because of the var keyword. So outside of this function, val is not accessible, and I'm returning a value. It just so happens that I'm returning a very complex value that is an object that has functions as properties. And so it's a lot of syntax, but truly what's happening is returning this is really no different than returning this, right? I'm just returning a single value from my function. But again, the value that we're returning is an object.
For that second one, the myAnonymous function.
Shoot. Yeah.
Do you have to invoke myAnonymous function like twice?
So what I'm doing here is that, gosh, what did I even do here? Oh yeah, so I kind of buried I kind of got myself buried here. I don't want to return a function here, right? There, that's right. Is that right? No, I cannot do that because this is val. What am I doing here? So declaring a function that's returning. Yeah, I was kind of just trying to demonstrate the similarities, and then I kind of got into a hole. So I'm returning a function.
Well, the second one is like you offload the responsibility to the user, like when they want to create a new closure or whatever, but having deadline involved.
Yeah, so this is going to be a function at this point, right? Here, well, let's see what so, like I said, I like to, definitely explore. So this should be a function that, yeah. So I would actually have to, so if I actually invoke this, what does this do? Then this gives me my, yeah. So yeah, I kind of.
Do you have to put another like invocation after that?
Yeah, so to actually get, so I would actually have to like do this, so I kind of got away from what I was really trying to illustrate, was that you're just getting an object back. So yeah.
Signal's more like a
Yeah, so I'm just gonna get rid of this. I mean,
Can you make the function within myAnonymous function in DB?
I can. I mean, I can invoke this thing right away, and kind of get away from this. But like I said, I'm about to just delete this because it's really not illustrating kind of what I want to right away.
This just sort of points to that.
Yeah, I've just, what I was trying to kind of really, I mean, what I really wanted to illustrate there before I got into these multiple returns was that really what this syntax is really doing, so I'm going to get rid of this guy for now. And again, it's disposable. If I want to come back to it, I can just write it again. But again, we're creating a function.
I think what Ray said was, at least that's what makes sense to me, is that the second one that was there, you're offloading the responsibility for invoking it.
Yes.
More so than the first one, you're taking that on a little bit, because you've got that
Yeah.
aspect of it. So, and it's just where you.
Yeah, and you will see this pattern. I mean, we'll get more. This won't be the last time you see this. I mean, this is really something that's coming very soon. But this is a little bit more functional in nature, to where you're kind of. This is like currying, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we'll get to that. I think it's a little bit. It's not illustrating the point that I really wanted to illustrate. It was at first, and then I got away from it. But again, what I really want to illustrate with this is that iffy is basically, this. Basically, we're declaring a function and then invoking it, and that's really what I want to kind of illustrate, is that this syntax is just defining a function that has internal state, internal variables, and we're returning them, just like any other function. And then immediately that function, we're invoking it. And we're going to get, and since we're invoking it immediately, we get its return value, which is an object. So
Which then puts in the scope and can be triggered with, right? Okay.
yes, so in terms of scope, so what is the scope of val here?
Well, scope, that's internal, but I'm talking about the actual get value set value function.
Okay,
So those are accessible.
yeah, so now they're accessible via the my module variable. So I can say, get value now. I'll have to console log this thing. So now I can get to that. And this is, again, for those of you that encapsulation was still kind of weird. Val only lives inside the scope of this function. I cannot access it directly. I cannot say, my module val. If I do this, if I try to access it that way, I'm going to get an error, right? It's undefined. There is no val outside the scope of my module. But since I'm exposing a function that, because this function is defined inside of my my iffy or my outer function, an inner function always has access to the variables of an outer function. So again, if we kind of break it down to a more simple example, have my outer value equals 0, and if I declare another function inside of here, which I can do, that's valid JavaScript, I can, I have access to any variable declared in the outer function. What I cannot do, if I have an inner value equals 10, I cannot do this. run this. Oh, I have to invoke inner function.
You have to return something.
Well, I'm just doing an example with scope here. So,
But I mean, to like even obtain outer value,
I'm sorry.
wouldn't you have to return something from that function? They wouldn't even retrieve.
For inner function or outer function? Which function are you talking about?
I'm not even sure anymore.
Okay, so I have to invoke outer function to show how this works. But let me,
Okay, so if you have
this will work, and I'll show you.
invoked by it, then I guess.
Yeah. So just to kind of demonstrate here. Actually, I like the point of that. Okay, so what I have here, I have an outer function, right?
Yeah.
So I have to invoke that just for any of this stuff to run, right? This is just a definition. It hasn't actually run. When I execute that, it goes in here, it defines outer value, it defines this function, it does not invoke this function, it just defines it, and then it invokes it.
Yeah, since you didn't have it invoked, I was just curious as to why it was returning anything that wasn't. So.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, but I just want to demonstrate, I want everybody to understand, part of understanding modules and closures is understanding this concept, is that a variable outside of a function, a variable that is inside an outer function, so when this variable and this function both share like this outer box, and think of this like boxes. I mean, that's how I always think about it, is a function is a box, and there's stuff that's inside this box. And inside a function, you can have variables and you can have other functions. And anything that's kind of a sibling like this, kind of share scope, and it kind of goes down the hierarchy. Again, inside of a function, I have access to the variables outside of that function. It does not go the other way, is that inside of a function, I do not have access to variables outside of that function. So inner value here, because it's inside this function, does not exist outside of this function. But again, because outer value and inner function share the same kind of box, then any variable declared out here lives inside here. Does that make sense?
So you can reach from the inside out, but not the outside in?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Got it.
And again, kind of in terms of if this doesn't totally make sense, kind of do stuff like this. Just try to see it, try to write it and see it, and kind of get your hands on it. I think it helps. So we still kind of got away from. I do want this to be clear, and if this is clear, modules and closures will start to become more clear, because it all revolves around this concept of scope.
I think it's clear. I think you're asking to write this.
Okay.
It would take me a very long time.
Yeah. And that's why we're doing the exercises. So.
We covered this yesterday, and even though it totally makes sense when you're just staring at the syntax, because the function wants to use the curly brackets, and then object literals are also in the curly brackets. Until you're used to it, you just kind of like, you see too many curly brackets.
Right.
Going on here.
Yeah. Right.
And then,
Which,
especially when the creation of it is creating an object itself, kind of
Yes.
you're returning.
Right.
So you're just like,
Yeah, no, it's total syntax overload, and that's the road I was starting down when I started this whole thing. So let me get back on track to that, kind of mental hacks around that problem. And yes, it is a lot of syntax, and once you get it, it's fine. It never trips you up again, but it is very hard, and that's why people that are come from other languages, it's stuff like this why they hate JavaScript. They're like, so stupid, like, and yeah, it is stupid, but you get it and you move on and you build cool stuff, and that's much more important.
I think looking at it on the slide, it's easy to see the code and understand which one can access which.
Right.
But when you have a problem and you say,
Yes.
build this
Yeah.
value and think about which one needs to access which when I actually write
Right.
it, and
Right.
maybe that's a little bit more
Yeah.
difficult.
And again, the best way you will learn any of this is when it doesn't work and you have to personally take those mental cycles to why doesn't it work, and then you get the light bulb. And again, that's why I end up always talking more than I ever want to, but definitely that's when you'll get it. So let me kind of show you some hacks around how to make this less cumbersome on your brain. So yeah, like we said, we have brackets here that are defining our function. We have brackets here that are defining our return value. We have a return statement here, and it's like, what the hell, all of this stuff. So another way to write this exact same thing is, like this. To write a module is I can create an empty object. What I can do is I can start to say, again, because this is an object that you can give key value pairs, I can say my module get value and just do a function expression. Is get value is an anonymous function that returns val. Right? That's legit. Because it's assignment, I have a semicolon at the end here instead of a comma, because I'm not assigning key value pairs in line. I'm doing a function expression assignment.
When you're setting the value to get value, like, so you're doing the function that returns value, right?
Yep.
For closure, right? But could you just set it to like parentheses return val? Module get value equals parentheses return val.
No, for some reason, I don't think so. Here, let me type this out. I want to just show you how my module grows. But you're saying, like,
instead of having a function and whatever, you just put return val.
Like that?
Yeah.
Like how we're doing in this iffy kind of thing.
But without the other side of that too. Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah.
No, I don't think I don't think it's gonna let us do that, and I can't tell you why. Yeah, it just doesn't.
Okay.
And so it's weird. We only get to do that behavior in just that one, this one scenario of setting up an iffy. And I don't know. I guess you would have to invoke. I guess if you wanted to do something like that, I mean, you could probably do. I mean, you would have to do something like this. You would have to create it, create an iffy,
Right. Okay.
and then invoke it, and that's like you don't want to do that. That only makes our head hurt more. We're trying to make it hurt less. So, so we're just making get value a function that has very simple behavior that we can understand, right? And then I can do, set value as well, equals a function that takes in new value and then, you know, it is a very simple, it just assigns this new value to our internal state. Slide this over, I want to keep
This
this.
is a little bit, I mean, it's not maybe, it's not fewer lines of code,
No,
but it essentially is where you're like, oh, yeah.
Yep. So does everybody see here that, and here, let me, just to be consistent, console log again. So we see how my module is growing. But you see here, this function and this function are exactly the same. There's absolutely no difference in what these two functions return. So I can show you here. Oh God, this is terrible naming. I don't want here my other module. If I console log module outside of here, console log my other module.
Module.value.
So I have these. Let me comment these out because they're polluting. So if I clear this, gosh, I should turn off my HipChat. I'm broadcasting my HipChat to the world. So you see here, there is no difference. It looks a little bit different because I used input here and new value here. You know what? Let me just clean that up instead of even having to point it out.
Pretty good line numbers on page.
There probably is. There's a little help. Oh my God! Hold on. Let me get out of HipChat. Getting blown up.
So popular.
All right. Okay. So you see here, there's absolutely zero difference. What's that?
Second object.
Oh.
One difference. You lied to us.
All right. You and your eagle eyes. That's a good thing, actually. Thank you for pointing that out. But, and speaking of that, I like to do this, is that even though I'm doing this inline function where a semicolon absolutely doesn't matter, I do like to always be consistent that this is an end of line, just like anything else. Even though I'm only doing one line, doing it like this, that a semicolon still matters because that's just what I do.
Would there ever be an instance where not putting that in might break what you're doing?
Yeah, and I honestly, I don't even want to have that conversation. I want people to just always put semicolons.
Okay.
And just get in the habit, and you'll never have that one instance come up where the question you're kind of asking. So yes, there are times when where it can happen. But if you get in a good habit where your expressions always end with semicolons, you'll never ever have to figure that out. So again, these two functions, same thing. This is probably easier to draw at this point than that, right?
Well, I think it helps to see it both ways to understand better the top way of just doing what that, like, maybe what all the more place be.
Right.
Just do in a variable assignment type of way.
Yeah.
Whereas object assignment is still kind of.
Yep.
And,
Yeah. I mean, this is easier. You see that it's an object, and you see that it's getting things assigned to it, and then you just return it. Whereas this, it's like, holy crap, I'm returning what? A function? No. An object literal? No. What? So, yeah.
Can we take a screenshot of this?
Yeah.
Post it?
Yeah. Let me actually. I can just save this and share it, or share it and save it.
It kind of looks like
Yeah.
Which is, yeah.
And again, just kind of on like a philosophical note, you'll see a lot of developers, I mean, it's just like anything else. We like to show off, right? We pick up tricks over time to make, shorter code and stuff like that, or just show that we know stuff. Readability for other humans is always more important than the fact that you can cram a bunch of shit into one line that does something. Like, if nobody else can read it, then who cares, is my opinion. Some people care, I don't. I would prefer that anybody else comes and looks at my code and is like, I understand what that's doing. And that is much more important to me than showing off, whatever. But I do admit over time, I probably have started gravitating towards things like this because I see them a lot, and so yeah. But I still like this more, and I would probably do this for two things. Or like if I was writing a module that had 2 return values, I would probably do it this way. If I was writing one that had 10, I would do this. Like, I don't like seeing, what I definitely don't like is this kind of pattern. When you start to see this, and this thing kind of just goes on,
Well, because it's hard
like,
to comment that.
yeah,
Like, wait, what is this one doing? What is that one doing?
Right.
What is this one doing?
right. But like, if you start to see this where there's actual functions, where, people are actually doing stuff here, and that like there's actually logic happening here, and some other function call, then this is starting to get to the point where, like, okay, you know what, like, maybe this makes more sense. But you will absolutely see this, and again, in a very short amount of time, you will see this and not feel so uncomfortable with it. And people definitely do this, and you can make the argument that to some level, this is only creating one object in memory, and there's a smaller memory footprint. Whereas for this, well, actually, I shouldn't say. Actually, I take that back. In this instance, it's the same thing. It's an object that has properties assigned to it. One other thing I wanted to kind of show you was the revealing module pattern. Well, I'll just type it out. This is kind of another variation here. I guess to finish up my last point, sometimes you create more variables than you need for readability, and you can make the argument that yes, it's using more memory because you have more variables, but on the machines that we use in today's world, 2 more variables in a small application does not mean anything, unless you're doing like stock trading where every single little nanosecond of computing cycles matters. Then the fact is most software that we build does not need that level of optimization. So if you can use another variable to make it more explicit, then especially starting out, do shoot for that. So okay, so I want to kind of show one other thing. So even kind of taking this to another step is just writing my actually writing named functions. So, and just not even thinking about a module really in return values is kind of just writing almost kind of what I like to think about of kind of an object-oriented approach, or just imperative programming in general, just writing functions that do things and knowing that they have kind of scoped variables. Do something like this, and I'm just focused on writing functions here. It's like, okay, I'm just thinking about scope and writing functions, and that's cool. And then at the end, you know, then I can kind of turn this into a module where it returns, you know, generally I wouldn't want to make these the same name. Just do get, or I'll do get val, just to demonstrate that these are not the same.
Why don't you want to make them the same name?
Just because it's confusing that,
Get value equals get.
yeah,
Okay.
because I think it's, for me, I you know, like, now that I'm consuming this outside of this, and I have like, if I'm doing like this, right? So now I have get value here outside of it. I have something called get value inside of here, and it can just be confusing.
Okay.
If you know,
This was the style that protects the function moving forward, like it can't now be
yes. Yeah, so these are completely, you know, these are just pointers to these internal functions. And I can show that here is that, let me think. So I can change,
So if you're returning the entire object, you're returning the function with it. Whereas now you're just returning the return values of the function.
well, I'm returning pointers to functions.
Right.
So, yeah.
You could invoke those there at all? No, you wouldn't.
No, I mean, well, I guess, you know, I am going to change the name just to be consistent with these other modules I created. So if I come out here and console log this, we're going to see that, again, externally, we really have the same, oh, I didn't invoke. Didn't see the difference there? Because I didn't invoke my function, it was actually a reference to the entire function. I didn't get the returns because I didn't invoke this inner function for it to actually return something to me. So now if I run this, you know, again, all three of these approaches are different, but give me the same external interface, which is an object with get value and set value.
So what's the difference between the revealing module and the other one?
The difference is that I can kind of have internal functions in here, like this, like, let me just type this out and I'll explain this. Difference between a revealing module is that I may have, it's not really that much different than this one. It's different than this one for sure. Like if I tried to do it on this one, you know, if I had like, if I had like log value here, you know, if I wanted to, I mean, I could define a function here, but the difference is basically that you're writing functions that all your functions are internal to that closure, and you're just kind of exposing what you want. And so it's really more different than a than kind of an object literal. I mean, I can do the same thing here, but
Is there any specific pattern that like is like something we should get used to? Like what is
Best practice. limited sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You see all of them, so I mean, just all the time.
So you see all of these different versions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, I think to start off with, what I would, really want you guys to see initially is the likeness between these, and then once you really start to kind of grok that these are all the same, then you kind of either pick a preference or one that makes sense. Revealing module is again, if you just want functions that are kind of written like you would normally would write imperative programming style, and then just exposing a subset of those, then revealing module is a good choice. If all of your functions that you're writing are going to be exposed, then use one of these two. Like if log value, if I don't need it to stay internal, then and to finish up my thoughts too on revealing module. And actually, this is a big part of the difference between why somebody wanted revealing module, is if I'm returning like this, for me to actually call this function, to call log value, I actually even kind of have to do like this log value, which again, at the end of the day, it works exactly the same. But if you don't want to type this all the time, right? If you just want to call a private function like a private function, then this gives you that ability, right? So again, it's much more style oriented than behavior oriented.
Log value would have to be input, not value up there, right? On the other one.
Yes.
Okay. Just double check.
Yeah. No. So, but again, all these functions are defining a function, creating an object, and returning that object. And that object has key value pairs, which are names and functions. And all of these do that. I think you guys have kind of already identified that this one probably makes the most sense to you right now. And that's fine. If that makes sense, roll with it.
Well, that or there's even a module between two that makes more sense. And that I kind of like that you just created functions.
Yeah.
Only creating a reference, and then at the end, the ones that actually need to be accessed.
Right. And that's what I like about revealing module is, again, I come from kind of like an object-oriented background. So like I was used to writing, or even imperative style, I was used to writing code that looks like this, defining variables and functions, and then having them interact. And with module, I like writing like this because I just focus on what my code's doing, and then at the very bottom, it's like, okay, what's my API for this thing? Yeah. Oh yeah, boom, that's what I'm returning, and it's almost like two different trains of thought. Is that this is kind of secondary. Not completely. Obviously, I'm always thinking about both, but again, our classes, we're starting out with very small classes. This will get to be 100, 200 lines of functionality, and then again,
It's also
kind of
really good to see all the different options, because out in the real world, you see people who come from different backgrounds writing all different styles.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the important thing, is that you recognize the patterns and understand that they're the same. And you'll meet people that swear to God that one is better than the other, and whatever. It's like religion. It is. I mean, and sometimes it's valid. I don't know. My opinion is, I think it's so much more valuable to just be able to recognize things and get things done than.
Well, yeah, this
I don't have time for pissing matches over things that don't matter.
This was really helpful though to see, like,
Yeah.
create this way. It's this.
Yep.
This way, this way, it's the same thing.
Yep. And it all comes down to functions and types, you know, values. That's really all this is. Just the syntax makes it all crazy, especially with the iffy stuff.
Question about this, can you scroll down?
Yeah.
Where did you have this? That was on top.
Oh,
Yeah.
up here.
Oh, yeah, so you didn't have this log value and you said log value. One, just look at the inner scope first and find it.
It would, but there's no function called log value. There's an object that has a key log value. So if I run this now, I should get an error. If I think I might actually have to invoke it.
It is being invoked.
Here, let me call. I have to call set value. If I run this now, log value is not defined.
So this becomes
It travels up one scope, doesn't it? Sort of.
Well, again, if we look at what we're doing is so if we look at what my module is, we're never defining functions directly, right? We're creating anonymous functions that that are assigned directly to an object. So none of these things are accessible by this name without talking to the object that they are a part of first, because these are all internal to this object that we're creating. They're never just defined as functions on their own. They're callable. So so that's why there is no function log value. There's an object that has a key log value that its value is a function.
I see, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, you know, yeah, you can make this work if you like this style. You'd have to do this. If you don't want to do this, then, you know, revealing module makes it so you don't have to do that. So you can call private functions just like you normally would call a function. So here, let me God, I can't even talk. Share this, save this, show this. I was gonna as soon as I shut down HipChat, I needed it.
The blow up.
Shit. Okay. Whoa. There's a walnut in here.
There's a what?
A walnut.
Oh,
You ain't never seen a walnut?
oh yeah.
A donaffle?
Yeah, it was a awful.
A chaffle? Okay. So, you good? Helpful? People feel a little bit more confident in terms of what we're doing? Okay. So now we can apply it. So, who's done with Vault? Okay. I wonder if I should do like code reviews. I mean, we have 40 minutes till lunch. What do you think, Ray? Some code reviews on Vault, or just let them go? We've been talking all morning. Oh yeah, screw that. I'll let John do some code reviews maybe, but I want to get you guys in it. So I'll give you the next exercise. Who's not done with Vault? All right. Let me stop this thing.